Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're here to talk to you folks about some interesting topics, I think, anyway. I'm really excited. I saw the pictures that you sent me, so,
Right on. I'm actually really shocked you've never heard of mine. I'm going to be covering the War of the Worlds. Robin, what are you going to be covering this week?
I am going to be covering the Hand of Glory.
I've never heard of the Hand of Glory, so...
I am surprised you've never heard of it.
When you sent me the pictures, I was like, oh, it's a monkey's paw. So I don't know what to expect here. It's going to be really fun.
Cool.
I am excited to jump right into it. We are recording this the same day it releases, which is November 3rd. So happy Election Day to you folks out there. Make sure you get out and vote. Voting's important. Voting's a good thing.
And before we get into our topics, I just want to give a quick shout out to our lovely patrons, Saul, Ethan, Cody, and Sam and Andrew. You guys are absolutely awesome. And thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon.
Indeed. So if you actually go over to patreon.com/scarishpodcast, you can check out the different various tiers that we offer, because at a certain point, you can get a shout out once a month, just like these wonderful patrons just did. Sincerely, it helps us so much, so thank you one more time. I believe I'm actually going to be going first this week, if I am not mistaken.
Yeah, you go, girl.
Cool. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump right into it. So this week, it's my first topic since Extraterrestrial October ended. And I mentioned previously during that month, which is only a few days ago, it was really nice having a focused topic for a specific period of time. Like, I was actually kind of excited to not have to think about, oh, what am I covering? But I had so many different UFO experiences that I had already marked off on our topics list that I really just had to set dates to them, which was nice. So I was actually kind of excited for this day because now I could just have the freedom back to take on whatever topic I wanted. And then it came time to write the script. And I remembered how much it sucks trying to find a topic because there's just so many choices, and it's like too many choices are a prison. So I had one in mind, but after Robin and I talked about it, we realized that it might be a bit too much for this week because it's one of the more frightening topics that I've ever discovered. It's like real type scary too. It's not like supernatural or paranormal. It's just like some crazy stuff. So I just decided, hey, let's go ho. So we decided, let's go ahead and postpone that one and talk about something that's actually more relevant to this week, which I'm pretty excited about. So this episode, like I mentioned, is coming out on November 3rd, which is Election Day. And I don't think anyone really needs any more anxiety than some of us already have. You know, just do your civic duty, go vote, come home, take it easy, and listen to Scaryish. So I decided to cover a topic about a different instance of mass panic. So, without further ado, I present to you the War of the Worlds. Before I move on, just really quick jumping in, side note. For those of you who tend to watch the Storytime episodes live, which are typically on Tuesdays, this week we are going to move it to Wednesday. So it'll be Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you watch the Storytime episodes live, please join us this Wednesday. Back into my topic, though, shifting gears. So
that was a horrible shifting gears sound.
I think it was a really clean shift. But I present to you the War of the Worlds. Not exactly. I'm not actually presenting War of the Worlds.
We're going to have Tom Cruise come in here, and he's going to just...
I hate you so much. I'm going to tell you the story of a time when War of the Worlds was presented. And it's kind of funny, too. I recently talked about this with a friend of mine. When we were discussing the Halloween special that just came out on Saturday, my buddy Garrett, who directed and produced the episode, and I actually talked about this because we were talking about having the production where it sounds like something's real and the things that he was excited to do for the episode, which, if you haven't heard it yet, is absolutely amazing.
It's so great. You folks should definitely listen to it.
We read The Telltale Heart. It's super sweet. But we were bringing up the fact that War of the Worlds and everything that happened with that and how exciting that was to think about just in general. And I thought, oh man, I really need to put that on the topic list. I've never really brought it up. Mass hysteria is definitely something that should be on a Scaryish topic board, you know? So it's kind of fun that this is my topic immediately following Halloween, especially because the event that I'm covering happened the night before Halloween 82 years ago. So October 30th, 1938. Before we get into that, allow me to explain at the most basic level of what we're going over. Now, some of you are aware of what I'm about to cover. Some of you have heard this story. Some of you are thinking, why is Adam covering that Tom Cruise movie from 2005?
That's why when he told me, like, War of the Worlds. I was like, that's all I could think of is this movie that I watched.
I was like, you never heard of War of the Worlds? She's like, no. I'm like, I mean, it's a movie also. She's like, well, I know that. So I'm excited because you've not heard this before. I think it's going to click. You're going to be like, oh, this. So try and hide your disappointment when you realize it, Robin. So allow me to explain. So there are these things called
aliens.
Books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And The War of the Worlds is one of those. It was written by H.G. Wells, and it was published in 1898. So there will be spoilers for the movie / book, but if you haven't seen / read it, that's on you. The book's been out for like 120 years, so don't blame me for literally wasting your entire life because you had your whole life, regardless of who you are listening to this, to read War of the Worlds. Or 15 years to watch the Tom Cruise version, and that's still quite a bit of time. So, War of the Worlds is a book about an alien invasion with an army coming from Mars to take over the Earth, which means it would have really fit well into Extraterrestrial October.
I was going to say, I was surprised you were going to cover this, and you just came off of the extraterrestrial stuff.
This was my backup topic if I wound up not covering the Ariel School encounter. So it kind of fit, but it wasn't exactly October 30th. Yeah. So I'm about as far away from it, regardless, as I could have been. So it's still really fun. I mean, it's fun for us because we get to talk about it. For the people who lived through this, depending on, I don't know, how calm you were, it wasn't really that fun. So if you've seen the 2005 movie that covers the War of the Worlds, it is obviously much different from the book in a lot of ways, considering it was made 100 years or so after the book was written. And there's a lot about it that does come from the book and a lot that does not. Clearly, things like cars weren't in the book at the time because they hadn't really been invented yet. I was reading like some snippets that I remember from high school.
Did it have robots and stuff though?
I mean, it had a lot of the stuff that was similar
to
what you see in the movie, which is the technology that the aliens had.
Yeah.
But it's like the guy crashes his like horse-drawn carriage.
Oh.
I'm like, that's fucking hilarious. So it really is about these aliens just showing up and wrecking shop. One of the most iconic things from the books is definitely carried over in the movie. So if you have seen the 2005 version of the movies, the tripods are pretty famous in the books, and it's a really good interpretation of what the tripods are in that 2005 movie. They're basically these giant war vehicles that just lay waste to the armies of man, like nothing can stand in their way, and it's not even hard for them. They basically just show up, and they fuck our shit up.
Drop
hard.
some EMPs, you know.
I mean, I don't think that happens, but they have heat rays, exactly like they do in the books. There's another weapon they have in the books, which I'll get to, because it's actually important. So, obviously we know now that Martians don't have tripods for war vehicles. They have massive warships that float. There's no legs. All hail the Martian overlords.
What the...
Sorry about that. That note is actually meant for December 2020. I did not mean to spoil the season finale of 2020. What? I'm a time traveler, so just keep that under wraps. JK, LOL.
I'm like so confused. Okay.
I hope. Believe it or not, I had to read War of the Worlds in high school. I enjoyed it to a degree, about as much as you can enjoy something you're forced to read. You know, a lot of times you can be forced to read a good book, and you wind up not liking it. And that was the first time I heard about the story I'm going to tell you because my high school English teacher brought this up. So, 40 years after the War of the Worlds was written, someone thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to read this out loud to folks? Sort of like how we have our Halloween special. Someone wanted to read a scary story on Halloween or around Halloween. Enter Orson Welles. Orson Welles was, at the time, an actor, director, writer, and a bunch of other shit on top of that.
He sounds very familiar.
Orson Welles is from the movie Citizen Kane.
Oh,
he's the guy's like,
okay.
Rosebud.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I think he also did a bunch of commercials. He's legendary for being like a big bearded man.
All right.
So with a very deep voice. At the time this took place, he was still very young, very skinny, kind of handsome. I don't know, he's not really my type. My type's more like Eugene from the Try Guys.
Oh my God. Yeah, he literally was like, I would make out with Eugene.
He's a beautiful man. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, so Orson Welles, amongst the other things he was a founder of the Mercury Theater, which they found in 1937. And amongst the other things that the Mercury Theater did besides live productions, they had a series on the radio called the Mercury Theater on the Air. So rather than just do plays in person, they presented these things over the airwaves for the entertainment of others.
All right.
Sort of like a podcast, except you had to tune in live. So what are those things called? Oh, a radio show. He had a radio show. Orson Welles wasn't the only person associated with this reading. When you hear this story, sometimes you hear all about Orson Welles. There was a lot of other actors that had parts within the story, which they would then tell on the air. So there were other actors that played approximately 27 different parts in total.
Wow.
Not necessarily 27 actors. I think there was like 19 or 20, because some of them had multiple roles. But, I mean, it's a big production. And it's a 60-minute program. So they're going to take a very long book and condense it into 1 hour. And they have to make some adjustments. So in 1938, they decided they are going to update it a bit. Include stuff like cars or news broadcasts over the radio, shit like that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's very much like what Garrett wanted to do when we decided to do our Halloween special. Like, hey, let's read the story, let's put in some ambiance, some background, stuff like that. So it's basically like Garrett is Orson Welles reincarnated.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying here. That's what this is all about. This is my conspiracy theory for that. Not really. So they really like to do this. In fact, this wasn't the first time they had done something like this. They had actually covered Julius Caesar a month and a half earlier using a newscast format. So rather than it just be the play Julius Caesar spoken over the radio, they changed the format. They made it contemporary. They made it about like a newscast that's telling the events that are unfolding when it came to Julius Caesar. So it's not like this was something brand new, but it's something that they are familiar with. And honestly, if you think about it, it's pretty cool. And I mention this because it's not like reading a story was out of the blue for this particular program. The episode that took place on October 30th, 1938 was episode 17. It was their 17th episode where they were reading some form of literary fiction over the airwaves and presenting it in a new, more contemporary way, you know? And by episode 17, you should pretty much know what's up. Whatever's coming out of them is obviously a work of fiction. If you tuned into our episode 17, we're already telling each other, I hate you, we're swearing too much, we're probably quoting A Million Ways to Die in the West way too often.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just saying, like, we
much.
were starting to hit our stride by episode 17, but we kind of had the format of the show down, and I think the listeners knew what to expect by episode 17, is my point. So Orson Welles and the cast have the event all worked out. They're going to do the newscast format again, not a straight reading. They'll play it out as if the events described in the book by the narrator are actually being broadcast by a news station. Because in most cases, this narrator in the book is telling you about all these things he knows after the events transpired. You know, this is a retelling of something he experienced, not sort of a live telling of what's being experienced. It's a newscast in the format, so if you're hearing about it, you have to have these extra characters, and they have to be in different scenarios to be seeing what they're seeing, rather than just describing events that he would eventually come to know what happened. That's just sort of the way the narrative has shifted with the events that they're going to have. So, to make this even better, one of the actors named Frank Riddick decided to base his character was named Carl Phillips, who was a reporter. He wanted to base him on an actual reporter. The actual reporter that was the inspiration was Herbert Morrison. Now, if you've never heard of Herbert Morrison, you've probably heard something from him. More specifically, Frank studied Herbert Morrison's radio report of the Hindenburg disaster.
Oh, wow.
So the phrase, "Oh, the humanity," that's Herbert Morrison. That's what he yelled as he watched the Hindenburg burst into flames and 97 people burned to death as it crashed to the ground. So Frank Riddick was like, yeah, that's the vibe I want.
Oh my God.
That's what he was going for.
All right.
So October 30th, 1938 shows up, and they kick off the broadcast. And now, there is this thing that happens during broadcasts where whatever seems like the most pertinent information or story goes first. It's called the lead. Sometimes, if you don't lead with your big story or your most pertinent information, people get annoyed. And that's another phrase. It's called burying the lead. You've probably heard it before. You don't want to do that, typically. In this case, they actually might have wanted to bury the lead here, because the beginning of the broadcast states that this is a reading by Orson Welles and co. of The War of the Worlds, the novel written by H.G. Wells. So they state at the very beginning of the broadcast, like, this is a bunch of actors that are reading a book. A fictional book.
Yeah.
Just so, you know, people won't freak out. And they just lead out with that statement. and then they launch into it. The problem with that
Did they only do it that first time?
They did it when the show started, and then the show started. Some people don't always show up for the beginning of a show. Some people tune in later on. So the show kicks off, and it's the narrator speaking lines from the book, very similar, if not identical, to the book. And eventually the show moves into the radio announcers that are supposed to be based in New York, discussing the events that are, quote-unquote, transpiring.
Oh my gosh. So, I just can't even imagine the people that have no idea what's going on, and they're hearing this newscast that's like, we got aliens. Oh my god.
So I don't know if you heard the quote-unquote, and if I would just say transpiring, I don't know if you could hear my air quotes there, but lots of folks in 1938 definitely didn't hear the air quotes. They tuned into what seemed like a radio news show that was speaking about an alien invasion from extraterrestrials from Mars. I'd like to hope that some folks out there immediately were like, how the fuck do you know they're from Mars? Is there a sign on the side of their ship that says, from Mars? Because, like, that's just knowledge that you shouldn't have, you know?
Yeah.
The creatures and their vehicles of war were all over the world, laying waste to any man-made war machine that was put in their way. So needless to say, people were a little freaked out. The show was planned for an hour, like I mentioned, so clearly some adjustments needed to be made to the 287-page novel. The way they made the adjustment was to take the vivid description of what was happening and just sort of make it sound like radio communication between a radio tower and an airplane, or a radio tower and a battleship, or a commander on the front lines giving his troops orders and what to do.
Imagine scrolling through the radio, you're just turning through the stations, and then you come across this news station that's saying all this crazy stuff.
And it's not like this is some small station. It's CBS, folks.
Oh my goodness.
This is the Central Broadcast System. I think that's what it stands for. I haven't looked it up in a long time.
I don't know what it means.
So the actors thought, things are going great. It's not like Twitch, where you can see the numbers of viewers in real time. You would base your show on how well the actual production is going. The sound effects in the background, the actual acting, the reading, are you dropping any words, things like that. It was right around 8:30, so half an hour into the show, when its first break would approach. And the breaks would be musical. It actually wasn't commercials. It was going to be like the broadcast would fade out, there would be a song or two, and then they would come back. And the scene that was going to wrap up before the musical break was playing out really well. Ray Collins was playing a studio announcer that was supposed to be broadcasting from the roof of a broadcasting building in New York. He was fucking crushing it, nailing his death scene as he described the tripods invading New York.
Oh my sweet jeez. Okay.
Now, in the books, they had their heat ray, which you can see in the movie if you watch in 2005, where people just like burst into dust, In the books, they also had something that they could shoot that would cause a poison smoke cloud to just settle in. So it's like the zombies in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
It's just a poison cloud. I like that Robin's like, yeah, we all know that. It's just like, oh, it's a joke. But seriously, it's like a poison cloud that could be shot out. So Ray's character was choking to death on poison as he described essentially what was the fall of New York. And it's at 8:32 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that the actual CBS supervisor, Davidson Taylor, got a phone call in the control room, and he was told, go interrupt the broadcast right now and tell people it's not real.
What happened?
So at this time, he's like, okay, I'll go. He gets up and he realizes the commercial break's about to hit, so I can't jump into the middle of the song and be like, so what you're about to hear is not real, because that already fucking didn't work once, So he's like, all right, well, we'll just keep going with it. It must be like the music is going to convince people that this is a show. This isn't an actual news broadcast, something like that.
Yeah.
So the break hits. He doesn't go interrupt anyone before the break. The broadcast sounds like a battle, but it totally jumps around from like one soldier to another to a reporter, and it sounds good, don't get me wrong, but people must have really been scared to think that the invasion that was occurring on the airwaves was somehow the most wonderfully edited cuts of different people on the front lines, and like their broadcast would end at the moment that they died and move over to someone new, to not notice that like the production value of this horrible event that was occurring was phenomenal, basically. And that, of course, was kind of terrifying, because every time it would shift, that meant someone new had died. And the folks that were being broadcast were talking about these massive forces of humanity cresting hills and actual locations and describing what they were seeing and how many tripods there were. And then it's like, bombs have no effect. Like, guns have no effect. And then all of a sudden it's like, just dead air.
Oh,
and then
my
we go
God.
to the next person. So
I'm just okay. If I had no idea that this was fake, I would get stressed out.
Right.
And your mind doesn't think about the fact, like, man, that's really convenient that it just hops to the next person because it's a news broadcast.
You're just like, tell me more. Like, I just
Yeah.
want to consume what's going on. So, you can kind of understand that people are scared at this point. Some actors would wrap up their parts like, hey, my character died, I'm done. Go outside the recording studio to chill out and wait for the broadcast to be done to, see everyone that was involved in the project and say good job.
Everyone used to smoke back then, right? So it's just
I'm just picturing a green room, everyone's fucking chain smoking cigarettes, just bullshitting. Everyone's feet are on the tables, no one's really taking anything too seriously. And one such actor that's doing this is Stefan Schnabel, who played a field artillery observer. And while he cooled his heels outside the recording studio, he noticed something a little weird. There were a couple of police officers there. And then there were a couple more. And according to him, quote, soon the room was full of policemen and a massive struggle was going on between the police, page boys, and CBS executives who were trying to prevent the cops from busting in and stopping the show. It was a show to witness, end quote.
Oh my goodness.
So the CBS executives are like, no, you cannot fucking go in there and shut us down right now. And the police are like, people are freaking the fuck out. You have to shut that down. And basically CBS executives are like, get the fuck out of here. And they're arguing with the police. So it's just like this giant mess while everyone else is just like nailing it in the studio. The cops had come to shut the whole thing down.
Why?
And while
I could see why, but it's just, it's fake, It's really crazy.
It's just this like unfortunate chain of events. And I'll get into some of the interpretations of like the scale of this hysteria and some of the reasons that led to the pockets of hysteria that did happen. But not quite done with the story. Because, as they say, the show must go on.
Okay.
And it sure fucking did. And I would like to point out now that you can, if you would like, go listen to this broadcast. You can find it if you just Google it. Just Google War of the Worlds 1938. Or if you go to YouTube and go War of the Worlds 1938, you can hear what it sounded like. And there's certain parts of it where you're like, yeah, I see if you tuned in at the right spot and it sounds like an actual news broadcast, you'd be like, oh my God, we're going to die. Everyone's going to die.
Well, I was listening to it, partially while I was doing my topic, and it sounded really, really intense.
Yeah, they made it sound really good. They did a great job with it. And the show would finish right around 9 p.m. They nailed their runtime. And at that time, one of the producers named John Houseman would field a phone call. That phone call was from a mayor from an undisclosed town in the Midwest who was demanding they shut down the show. His town had a mob forming in the streets to battle the alien invasion because people were so fucking scared. Now, according to Houseman's memoir, which I found, this is basically when the shit really hit the fan. And these are his words on what happened when the show came to an end. So it's like 9 o'clock, they wrap up, they're done. And this is what Houseman says happened. So, quote, for we were off the air now, and the studio door had burst open. The following hours were a nightmare. The building was suddenly full of people in dark blue uniforms.
Which were police.
Hustled out of the studio. We were locked into a small back office on another floor. Here we sat incommunicado while network employees were busily collecting, destroying, and locking up all scripts and records of the broadcast.
Why would they destroy it?
Because they know they're in trouble.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
Finally, the press was let loose upon us, ravening for horror. How many deaths had we heard of? Implying that they knew of thousands. What do we know of the fatal stampede in a Jersey Hall? Implying it was one of many. What of traffic deaths? The ditches must be choked with corpses. The suicides. Haven't you heard about the one on Riverside Drive?
Oh my God!
It is all quite vague in my memory and quite terrible. End quote. Basically,
so
the press
were
are
so
like,
afraid of dying, they were just killing themselves.
well, here's the thing. A lot of this stuff was overreaction or over-dramatization of what was actually taking place. Like, people were terrified, and I can't find any confirmed deaths on what took place.
All right.
But the news media went fucking wild with it. They're like, why would you do this? Why would you play this prank? Everyone out there is scared. And it wasn't quite everyone out there, but it was enough to have caused a stir. The actors had to be snuck out the back of the CBS building to keep from being followed, whether by reporter or police officer. Orson Welles went to the Mercury Theater, since he had been like one of the founding members, to hang out. There was an all-night rehearsal for a play that was coming up. And at around midnight, one of the folks that worked with him saw him, and they're like, yo, dog, have you seen this shit in Times Square? And Orson Welles is like, fuck me, what is it now? So they walk down to Times Square, and the Bulletin, like the New York Times building, the famous building that has that bulletin that like circles around the building that gives you all the headlines and shit.
Yeah.
It had a headline going by that read, Orson Welles causes panic, on display for everyone in Times Square. That was real life at that moment for Orson Welles.
Wow.
So it was a big deal. People were listening to CBS and heard this happening, so they naturally called CBS to find out what the fuck was going on. And in most cases, they called their local stations, not the station where it was happening at. And the CBS employees at local stations, including at the time a future host of The Tonight Show with NBC, was fielding calls telling people like, it's just a show, Martians aren't actually invading, everyone just chill the fuck out. But that wasn't the only types of calls they were fielding. This is 100% true. They're also getting calls from people claiming to see Martians approaching.
There's no
seeing
way.
Tripods on the horizon.
Oh, okay.
The invasion had come to small town America too, not just New York. Why isn't anyone talking about it? People were so scared they were straight up seeing shit that wasn't there based off the descriptions they were hearing on the radio. And it's kind of funny because it's another one of those things where had they just read War of the Worlds, they would have been like, why does this invasion sound so familiar?
Why do they have horse-drawn carriages? What's going on?
It's like, well, I told you they updated it. So it wasn't across the country, but there were pockets around the country of people forming mobs, going into storm shelters and bomb shelters, fallout bunkers, gathering up their possessions in their car and just straight up fleeing, hoping they can get away from like a population center that might be invaded. And it turns out that the show was running at the same time as another rival show on NBC was running. They ran a comedy hour at the same time from 8 to 9. And its commercial coincided with the part of War of the Worlds where the news reporters started frantically discussing this attack that just started taking place. So anyone who's like, fuck commercials, and changed the channel and went to listen to CBS, they were like, there's a war going on. Like, what's happening? And I remind you, this is end of the year, 1938. Everyone is freaked out about what's going on in Nazi Germany at the time, and the fact that World War II is on the horizon. So people were already a little bit heightened, shall we say. One thing did work in favor of the gullible or late listeners. The show was just not that popular. It didn't have that many listeners, and most of those who had tuned in knew what to expect.
It had enough listeners to cause panic, though.
But the listeners that it had didn't panic. The panic had been spread by those who wandered in and weren't familiar with the program, and then contacted their friends or neighbors or relatives or whatever to say, we're at war. The panic that was caused absolutely existed, but was also blown totally out of proportion at the time, treating the hysteria as like nationwide. Like you set the nation on fire. Everyone in the country thought that we were being invaded. And as time went on, people sort of backed that, saying like, oh yeah, like the War of the Worlds broadcast in 1938, it was the night America was terrified by the Martian invasion. So you're saying it wasn't actually nationwide, though? It was just parts of the nation. It wasn't the whole nation. Okay. That's what nationwide would basically mean. I mean, I hear they're on your side, but, you know. I hate you so much. Okay. So Orson Welles had to give interviews regarding whether or not he knew or intended to cause that much of a problem with the broadcast. And he had mentioned in his interviews, we had done the newscast thing before. No one listened to it. You know, that's not really his fault. The event certainly brought a ton of attention to his show and especially to Orson Welles. And it quickly became one of the most famous broadcasts of all time. It still is. It's 82 years later and I'm still talking about it. And it's a perfect example of how easily disinformation can spread like wildfire. Even if there's reliable information present to let you know, hey, this isn't real, people will still ignore it. People literally said, I remember seeing something about the scheduling of the radio program, and it said that the broadcast was fake, but when I heard it, it just scared me so much I forgot. So it's like, if you prey on someone's fear, logic can just go out the window. It's this perfect example of isolated mass hysteria. Not intentionally caused. So can you imagine what it would be like if it was intentional by someone trying to cause mass hysteria? It's also a perfect topic for right now, considering that the day this releases is November 3rd, 2020. Election day. Lots of folks have tons of stress about what's to come. I think the one thing you can learn from what happened 82 years ago is that you just need to stay calm. Don't let your fear control you. Don't let anyone manipulate you through your fear. The War of the Worlds scare definitely affected folks who already had this heightened sense of fear about the looming conflict to come of World War II. And it's kind of the way they felt like something was going to be there. All of a sudden, something was there. And they latched onto it, and they had the reaction that they had planned if the Germans had invaded, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, I have been planning for this, like, since I heard that Hitler might invade the United States, or Hitler might start a war. So I'm grabbing a pitchfork, and I'm going to go fight those fucking aliens with their heat ray and poison clouds. Like, you're an idiot. You're not going to win. Like, that's not going to work.
I'm sure they had better weapons than pitchforks back then.
They were so scared, they just decided to throw logic out the window. And I get it, man. 2020 has been quite a year, and none of us know what's to come. But I can tell you one thing without a doubt. No situation has ever been made better by panicking, or a knee-jerk reaction purely based on fear. Regardless of how crazy things seem, and how bad things can get, this too shall pass. And everything is okay right now. As I say this right now, in general, it's like, we're not being invaded by Martians. It's not World War II. None of that's going on. Like, we have stuff that we have to get through together, and we'll get through it with sense and logic. The world is not ending, and a level head will get you much farther than a pitchfork. And that, my spooky friends, is the War of the Worlds.
Nice. So what you're telling us is we should only panic at the disco?
Yeah. Unless you're at a disco, you don't need to panic. That's all I'm saying. So, right on. Before we move into Robin's topic, we're going to take a quick commercial break, which starts with me telling you about Manscaped, because it's a wonderful product that right now, if you go to manscaped.com, check out everything they have, and if there's anything there that you want, you can use code Scaryish, just like our show, SCARYISH, all caps, to get 20% off and free shipping, which is a pretty sweet friggin' deal. I've been using their products long before they approached us to sponsor the show, and I gotta say, if you need a hair trimmer, it's one of the best ones out there on the market. I have a bald patch from where Robin decided to shave me.
Still bald.
During our live show. Week. And they work really well, and they're really, really good for sensitive skin. So check them out if you have any area that you need to trim on your body and you don't want to get it torn up, because they work very, very, very well.
And I know it's called Manscaped, but ladies out there, you can use it too. I have. And
Robin's out there trimming her lady balls.
Yeah, pretty much. So I definitely recommend it. And we actually had a listener reach out to us and actually say that they use it for their cat. So if you have a long-haired cat that happens to mat really easily, pretty good razor for that too. It's wireless. It's great.
It has a little light on it too, in case you need to do it in the dark or the deep, dark crevices of your body. I was going to say soul, but you don't really trim that, so... But yeah, that's our ad read, and we'll move into the regular ads right now.
You've made it to the other side of the ad. Hello. So, I've had this topic on my list for a while, and I finally figured what better topic to come off of a Halloween month with like a little bit of, I did more haunted topics, things like that. I think I did a cryptid in there too. I know you did all aliens, and I thought what better way to come off of Halloween than a creepy artifact. I don't know if it can necessarily be called an artifact, maybe more like a legendary item, one that binds on equip.
Oh, nice. I was about to say, if I mouse over it, is it orange or is it purple?
Okay, so if you're listening to us, you might have already heard of it. I know Adam said he'd never heard of it before, which is crazy. It's something that's appeared in a lot of TV shows and movies. It's appeared in Supernatural, Buffy, of course, and even in the originals, which I have not seen enough yet. I've watched like the same 4 episodes 5 times. I just keep watching the first 4 episodes because I forget what happens and I have to rewatch it.
That's like me with Rick and Morty.
But
Except I watch the same 4 seasons over and over.
But this episode isn't about vampires, obviously. It's about this dark and interesting item called the Hand of Glory. So, Hand of Glory, chopped off dude's hand. We're going to get into it. I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting.
Would you say we're on the Hand of Glory?
Oh, I get it, because the edge of glory, hand of glory.
Hanging on a...
Do you know the words?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So, according to etymologist Walter Skeet... Why are you laughing?
Say that name 5 times fast.
Oh, God. Skeet. Okay. No. All right. So, according to Skeet, the name Hand of Glory is a form of folk etymology. And what folk etymology...
It means to the window, to the wall.
Fuck. What folk etymology is the changing of a word or phrase that replaces an unfamiliar form with a more familiar one. So it's just a more modern interpretation of an outdated, archaic one. And Skeet states that it comes from the word for mandrake. It's like a French phrase that butchers the word mandrake. And if you didn't know, mandrakes are a root that are seemingly human-shaped. I don't know how many of you have watched Harry Potter, but there's a point where the kids have to, like, repot the mandrake roots, and they're just, like, these screeching, screaming babies.
I love that scene. It's like, make sure you wear your earmuffs, because a scream can cause you to die. It's like, why do you have 9-year-olds doing this?
So I could see how the terms kind of changed over time through changes of language and social interaction and things like that. It happens all the time with things throughout history. Stuff now wasn't named the same thing it was back then.
Things just naturally become lost in translation.
Yes, like, and I think that's the perfect way to put it, is it's lost in translation.
If you want to know what it's like for things to be lost in translation, just take a sentence and run it through Google Translate, and run it through, like, your language to a different language, then that language to a different language, then that language to a different language, then that language to a different language, and then back to your language, and see if it comes out the same.
Brandon Ferris does those videos where he tries to bake through Google Translate. So he does that. He translates these recipes through all these different languages and back to English again, and they make absolutely no sense.
And it's hilarious.
All right. Anyway, so what is known about this iteration of the Hand of Glory is something that stems from old European beliefs. And they used to display severed hands of criminals to prevent future crime. So I can totally see how legends and stories like this kind of grow so fast.
Right.
Between the 1700s and 1900s, tales of Hands of Glory spread all across Europe. So, not surprised. They did a lot of hardcore stuff back then.
It's like if you're a thief, they chop off your hand to make sure, like,
yes,
the punishment fits the crime, so
right,
to speak.
exactly. Eye for an eye type thing.
Which it totally doesn't. It's like, you stole a Tootsie Roll, cut off his fucking hand.
All right. It was thought that if you made a candle out of the fat from a criminal that was hanged from the gallows, it would be imbued with magic. And it had to be fresh, of course. Now, by candle, I mean, like, with a wick and everything. Actual candle. Or in some instances, multiple wicks. And I say that because there are iterations where a clenched hand is used as the candle base, whereas there's others that have the fingers outstretched, and each of the fingers has a wick in it, you know?
High five candle. Got you.
Okay, thanks.
Well, 4.5, because the thumb is like, you know...
No, that's still a finger.
It's
you
short.
Don't say...
It's short, though.
The
That's
pinky
what I'm
is
saying.
also short, but it still counts.
If someone's like, I'm going to sell you 5 candles in one, and I'd be like, this is 4.5, dude. That one's really short.
So, I think your fingers are weird, because your pinky is freakishly long.
Thank you.
I don't know. Okay, anyway, yes. So there are some that are clenched, some that are fully open palmed candles. Or, you know, Hand of Glories. Some versions require that the hair of the hanged man is used as the wick.
Gross. You know what'll go really well with your fat of dead man candle? Burnt hair. Fucking disgusting.
Sounds like it smells real good. Okay. No, not really. So, the candle that you make out of the fat, you then place in the dry pickled hand. That is the Hand of Glory. And it, of course, would be the hand of the owner of the fat used in the candle. It's said that if you light the candle, it would render anyone motionless that you put it in front of. In more elegant words, of course. Legend also has it that the only light that's given off by the candle is to the holder of the hand. So the only person that can see it is that person.
That's interesting.
It's also able to unlock any door that it's placed before. And the most outlandish ability that I read about is that it can turn the user invisible, which is really hard for me to believe. I just can't think of, unless it's like super magic, But I can see, the light only being seen by the user, stuff like that. I can believe that stuff, even though even that's outlandish. But being able to be turned invisible, it's not an invisibility cloak,
Right. That's a really expensive potion, too, just going based off of 5th edition, so that's a D&D joke.
Is Hand of Glory a thing?
No, but invisibility is a thing.
Oh, okay. The process in which to create a Hand of Glory is described as follows, worded loosely, obviously, because I don't want to do word for word. It's much easier for me to describe step-by-step kind of things. The process was described in a 1931 publication of a book titled Witchcraft, Magic, and Alchemy. This book actually cites the process as described by Petit Albert.
Is it Albert or Albert?
Maybe it's Albert. In 1722, which is an 18th century grimoire of natural and Kabbalistic magic. Kabbalistic?
Sounds right.
All right. So here goes. You take the hand of a hanged criminal. Doesn't matter whether it's left or right, though many iterations say otherwise. Some say it has to be the right hand, where others say if it was murder, it has to be the hand that committed the crime.
Interesting.
But I guess if they used both hands, it's just going to be a hand.
You're good. 2 candles.
Right?
Congratulations. You get a twofer.
Like if you strangle someone, how do you know? Is it which hand is close? I'm
telling you, you get a twofer. You get 2 candles.
That would be crazy, though, right? Like if you were running a black market on these things and you were like, man, this is lucky. Got it.
Yeah, it's like strangulation murder. Jackpot. Can't wait for that dude to get hanged. Oh, my God.
There was a source I read that stated that it had to be taken from a corpse in the dead of night and during a lunar eclipse. Dead of night I kind of understand because it's probably illegal to dismember a body. Yeah. Lunar eclipse I think is very specific time. You'd have to expect a murder or something or a crime to happen on that night or day.
Well, it's kind of risky too, because if they're hanged and they're not still hanging, does it work?
Exactly. There's so many stipulations.
There's a lot of things that kind of have to line up for this to work right.
That's probably why it's so magical and rare. You then wrap the hand in part of a funeral pall. And if you're wondering, a funeral pall is the cloth that covers the casket during a funeral. So that's why they call them pallbearers.
Gotcha.
I didn't know that until today. So today I learned. Okay. So you wrap the hand with a part of it and then squeeze it pretty good. Get it all in there. Then you put it in an earthenware vessel. So like a clay pot or something like that. In this pot, or whatever it is that you use, you add zimmet, niter, salt, and long peppers, and grind it all into a powder. I don't know what zimmet is. It's kind of been lost to time because no one really knows what they mean by that word.
I'm sure someone out there thinks they know. I'm pretty sure it's garlic powder because I put that shit on like everything.
Oh my God. Yeah, he does though. Niter is potassium nitrate, which we still use today.
Right.
So you leave it there for a fortnight or 2 weeks. If you ever wondered what a fortnight was, it's not just a video game, also spelled differently. After the 2 weeks, you take it out and then you put it in the sun during the dog days, which are the hottest, most uncomfortable days of the summer, which is why they're called the dog days of summer. This allows for the hand to dry out. And on the occasion that the sun isn't strong enough, you can just pop it in the oven with some fern and vervain. And when I read that, I thought it was so funny because I had brought up originals. I brought up originals earlier. And vervain in Vampire Diaries, vervain is like the anti-vampire magical herb. They put it in the water system and stuff like, I don't know. But when I read vervain while I was doing all this research, I was like, man, that's so fun. I don't know. Anyway, I love Vampire Diaries. Then it's on to the candle part. So you use the fat from that same man. Some virgin wax, probably means like brand new, uncut, sweet wax.
100% Colombian uncut wax.
Some sesame, and then some pony. And because the original was 300 years ago, it's really not exactly known what pony is either. But in the book that I mentioned earlier, it's assumed that pony is horse poop, Poop.
Okay.
Yum. I don't know.
Gross.
I couldn't find any...
You're just giving this all the ingredients are going to make it smell even better.
Right? I couldn't find any other alternative as to what pony might be, because if you type PONIE into Google, it came up with literal ponies, like little horses, and my favorite pony, or My Little Pony, that's what it's called. My Little Pony stuff. So I was like, it's obviously not My Little Pony, and it's obviously not a small horse. So
I just have the song Pony in my head now. So thank you for that.
What's pony?
Baby, riding my pony.
Oh my god. Okay. Thanks for that. But I also thought maybe it's a flour, maybe it's a flour that you dry up and then grind up. I don't know. Apparently though, horse dung is combustible when dried. Go figure. So it's a probable interpretation of that assumption that it could be,
Sounds like you're making a bomb at this point.
Can you do that?
You got niter in there. You have combustible horse dung. It sounds like a bomb.
Really?
Well, yeah, you have two things that definitely are going to be like not the best ingredients or something you're applying a flame to.
I just remembered. Yeah, people use fertilizers in
yeah.
Okay, gotcha. You use the dried hand as the candle holder, or as I learned tonight, the candlestick.
So, Robin, this is so good. Robin asked me, like, what do you call a candle holder? And I was like, the candlestick. She's like, no, the candlestick is a candle.
Because to me, the candlestick is like those long candles that you stick in the candle holder. You know what I mean?
No, it's not. And so I go and I Google it and I read her the definition. I'm like, haven't you ever played Clue where it's like Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the conservatory? Like, how do you kill a person with a candle?
That's what I've always wondered. I've always wondered, how do you kill someone with a candlestick? Oh my god!
So like, it totally makes sense now why you're so bad at the game Clue.
I am really bad at that game, but it's just, I always wondered, like, how the hell do you kill someone with that? And it totally makes sense now. So today I also learned.
So the candle is called the candle.
Fuck you.
And the candlestick is the candle holder.
Yes. So if you folks are wondering too, I don't know if there's people out there, but yeah, the thing that you put the candle in is a candlestick. All right. So anyway, then you light it and you carry it around with you. There are different sources, though, that do have it where the hand would be drained of all the blood and then dried for months while someone chants like ritualistic poems or things the entire time throughout the entire process.
That's a long chant.
And then the hand itself is covered entirely in wax and becomes the candle. So there's apparently different iterations of how to make one of these, but that one I didn't see very often. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what can I do to fight off someone trying to mess me up with some magic hand? Well, it seems that there are ways to cause the hand to become ineffective, which is nice. You can't have something that's absolutely all-powerful. That would be terrifying.
Do you just blow it out?
No.
Battle's over.
Unfortunately. If you rub the threshold and other parts of the house by which thieves, purportedly who would want to use it against you, would use to enter with an unguent. So an unguent is like a paste you use to put over wounds and stuff like that. Like when we watched Alone, she made paste. Yeah. It's just something you can smear, right?
Does Vaseline count? Or what's that? Vicks Vapor Rub? Would Vicks Vapor Rub technically be
No,
an
but that stuff opens everything.
Right.
This unguent would be composed of the gall of a black cat, the fat of a fat white hen, and maybe the hen's not fat, I don't know how, but I feel like hens aren't really fatty. You can't really get a lot of fat off of them. I don't know. But you get the fat off of a white hen and then the blood of a screech owl.
Jesus Christ, man. This is like a World of Warcraft quest.
I'm sure it's really hard to get these materials. You know what I mean? This, too, is to be compounded during the dog days of summer.
It's like you're approaching a screech owl with like a syringe, like, please just stay still. Like, I'm so close to completing this.
The only way to put out the hand is with milk. You can only do it with milk. Don't know why. You can't blow out the candle like normal. So if you try to blow it out, it doesn't work. You could use milk or blood. But blood's a lot harder to get, I think.
I feel like milk's a lot harder to get.
What?
I mean, you just walk around with blood in your body.
Yeah,
all
but
the time.
it's like you don't have enough blood on. You don't have like a bucket of blood to douse out.
You slice your finger. You get a nice blood drop, and then you just pinch the wick. Battle's over. It's a good thing you have.
What if there's 5? Then you have to do it 5 times, but there's not enough blood. Technically, maybe it's not enough blood though, because you're just putting out the flame with your finger at that point, right? It's not necessarily the blood.
You let the blood touch first, then you just squish the blood around it, and I'm sure it'll work.
I don't know. I don't like getting that close to fire anyway.
I'm not throwing milk everywhere. That shit's a nightmare to clean up.
Also, old milk smells so bad.
I cry every time there's
But I mean, I'm sure by this point the unguent already smells really bad, so you're like, bleh.
And the burnt hair and the dead man's fat burning with the niter and the horse shit.
Fuck. Ew.
This recipe literally has horse shit in it, in case you were skeptical.
Oh my god, it's so gross. Okay. It was thought that burglars were the main users of the hand. They used it to put everyone to sleep within the homes that they planned to rob, so everyone would be unconscious while they ransacked everything. There is actually a Hand of Glory on display at the Whitby Museum in North Yorkshire, England, as well as an 1823 manuscript on how to make the Hand of Glory. This is supposedly the only surviving Hand of Glory in existence. It was discovered by a stonemason and historian named Joseph Ford behind a wall of a thatched cottage in Castleton in the early 1900s. So it made its way to the museum in 1935. It's said to actually entrance humans, apparently. I'm sure if you stared at it, it kind of just made you...
It's like gross. Is that actually made from the fat of a dead person?
It's not known why it was hidden within that particular wall. Some think it's possible that it could have been hidden after or even before a robbery of some type a long-ass time ago, and it's just been there. This particular manuscript that is partnered with this hand states that the hand was cut from the body of a criminal on the gallows, pickled in salt and the urine of a man, woman, dog, horse, and mare. Gross.
What the fuck?
Also collecting...
Someone was like, okay, I know we got the original recipe, but hear me out. I know how we can make this smell better. Everyone drop your pants and go get your dog.
Collecting that must have just not have been the funnest activity. I mean, horses, I know. I've ridden horses, and them going to the bathroom is not, it's just gross. They're big animals. Then it's smoked with herbs and hay for a month, then hung on an oak tree for 3 nights, then laid at a crossroads. It doesn't say how long it's laid at the crossroads, but then it goes on to be hung on the church door for 1 night, while the maker, whoever's making this thing, keeps watch on that porch. And, quote, "If it be that no fear hath driven you forth from the porch, then the hand be true one, and it be yours."
Wow.
End quote. So if you're not afraid of anything, and nothing scares you enough to make you run off of that porch, then you're good, and the hand will work, and you did everything you're supposed to do.
I mean, all you have to do is wait a night. If you've collected all that piss, I think you're good to go.
It's just gross.
It's like, otherwise it's just a fool's errand. I can't believe I collected all that dog and horse piss for this. And then you just walk off the porch.
Horse and mare, you got to do it twice.
Oh, wow.
So the hand at this museum is the type where each of the 5 fingers is outstretched. Supposedly, if any burglar lit a candle designed this way and one of the fingers did not light, then they took it as a sign that someone in the house was still awake. If it went out, like you lit it all, and then one of the lights went out, then someone woke up. I think that's strange because it's supposed to have all
I thought I was supposed to be
powerful and
invisible in this thing. I was going to say I'm going to break in, try and steal it. When the alarm goes off, I'm going to light it and just sneak out like Harry Potter. But apparently I can't do that because now there's all these extra rules to it.
There's a legend on the website of the Whitby Museum about the Spittal Inn in Stainmore in 1797. So, this story begins with an old woman asking the innkeeper to sleep on a chair on the first floor of the inn with the intention to leave early the next morning. The innkeeper agreed, which is nice of them because that's such a strange thing to ask, and they went to bed upstairs with their family. The only person left downstairs was a young maid. The young woman noticed something odd about the woman. In fact, she wasn't a woman at all.
Wow.
Beneath the woman's dress looked to be men's trousers. So, upon this discovery, the maid vowed to stay awake through the night to watch over this strange person. Once the man thought the maid was asleep, he removed his disguise and approached her with a lit hand of glory. He waved it in her face and said, quote, "Let those who are asleep be asleep, and those who are awake be awake," end quote. Having said that, the thief placed the hand on a nearby table and turned away from her to let his partner in crime in. As soon as he did so, the maid jumped up and shoved the man outside, closing and barring the door. She ran upstairs to wake the family to no avail because they were out. The hand had put them out. To this, it's assumed that the Hand of Glory had worked and everyone was in a deep coma-like sleep. Soon, the maid could hear the men trying to break down the door, so she ran back downstairs to attempt to put the hand out. She couldn't, so she scrambled, found some nearby milk, and threw it over the hand, which worked. Once the flames were put out, the family woke up to her cries from below. They were able to catch the thieves after a short time. The men promised they'd leave the family alone if they returned their Hand of Glory. The family, however, denied them this, and the thieves barely got away when the innkeeper took out his gun and shot at them, which is his right. There was also a murder mystery during World War II that is still unsolved to this day that is said to have been motivated by a Hand of Glory.
Interesting.
And that's a whole nother topic entirely.
That's the one where you freaked out.
That's the one where I freaked out. Yeah, I freaked out because I was like, oh my God, I've walked into something entirely different and this is going to be great and I can't wait to cover it. But be on the lookout for that one. That one's in the future. It's just so funny because I was going through all of this and this popped up. My brain was just like, this is so much. And it had been something that I'd heard of before. It's a topic I've heard of before, and I had no idea it would at all be connected to this, so I was super excited. So I'm excited to cover that one in the future. But these are legends and everything about the Hand of Glory, so it's pretty cool.
Indeed. So all I'm saying is there's a lot of steps to make one of these things, and I don't know if it's worth it.
I don't think you can anymore because people don't get hung,
Well, I mean, it's not like people can't be hung. We just don't
We don't hang criminals, do we?
I don't think so.
It's all electric chair now.
What I'm saying is, you could do it yourself if you found a criminal. If you really wanted to make a Hand of Glory, it's not impossible. Just saying it's not worth... I'm not collecting all that pee. That's not happening. It's fucking gross. So, but that's super interesting. I really like the story at the end. I'm really excited to hear what the next one you have to cover is. So when you do Hand of Glory 2 or Hands of Glory, the glorying...
It's not going to be called the Hands of Glory. It's just going to be called the topic name that it's going to be.
Handier Glorying 2. No, that one doesn't work. Right on. So we'll all wait with bated breath for that. But I think that's just about everything we have for episode 151. If you have a story you would like to share with us, whether it's about a Hand of Glory or about War of the Worlds, if it's something supernatural, spiritual, it could be true crime, could be coincidental, paranormal in any way, shape, or form, we would absolutely love to hear that. Please email storytime@scaryish.com, and we will read that on a Storytime episode. If you would like, if you just wanted to email it to us and you want it to be kept private, please let us know in the email as well. And we'll have a dialogue with you. A lot of folks reach out and say, hey, this happened. It just creeped me out a little bit. Just want to make sure I'm not crazy. And we get those a lot. That's no big deal. But if you want it to be read on the show, please just let us know in the email. And again, you can email storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us. You can also reach out to us on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scariyishpodcast. Twitter is @scariyishpod. And Instagram is @scariyishpodcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scaryish podcast, and those are monthly donations. There's a whole bunch of different tiers. If you folks want ad-free episodes, head on over there. Ad-free episodes start at $1. $1 for ad-free is great. And then
That's $1 for the entire month.
Yeah.
So it's 4 quarters, folks.
4 quarters. You can also go to coffee.com/Scaryish podcast. Those are one-time donations if you folks don't want to deal with the whole monthly thing. And all your donations go to helping us upgrade our studio setup, kind of keeping us going and creating new content for you guys, creating new merch for you guys. You folks are absolutely amazing, and we really couldn't be here without you.
Absolutely. So thank you to everyone who listens to the episode. We will be back on Wednesday the 4th. Yeah, Wednesday the 4th at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to do Storytime number 1 something something. Oh my God, there's so many. 143, I think. So please join us then. We hope to see you, and I think that's just about everything. So, Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.